Hey, Abigail here with the astrology of this week. Firstly, I think we do need to set the scene because I start these on Monday. I start on the beginning of the work week and then I go into the weekend with these. And so on Sunday, which is maybe the day that you're seeing this because I post this on the Saturday before, we have the Mercury Cazimi, which is always happens in the middle of a Mercury retrograde because of the way this moon, not the moon, Jesus, Mercury retrograde, the Mercury and Earth's orbit work. So there's always a conjunction with the sun mid Mercury retrograde every single time, doesn't waver. That's what happens. So we're coming off of what is an insight into this moment, what can be a breakthrough during the Mercury retrograde. I find that if you've had a rough early Mercury retrograde, this can be a turn. It can also be things were going fairly smoothly, and the other side of this, we're having to really face things. But whichever way it happens, it's still positive because we need to process. We need to understand the energy, especially with this Mercury retrograde not aspected. Being in Cancer, there's a lot of nostalgia, there's a lot of memory in this, there's a lot of going back and rehashing emotional stuff. And I also think because there's a lack of aspects, it also feels like there's not necessarily an externalized closure. You can get closure from within, but you are not going to find much external closure. Or you're not going to get closure unless you really seek it and dig down. And even then, it can be kind of dicey because you're kind of in the minefield of what miscommunication can or cannot happen. I feel like if you do want to find external closure, maybe do it once the Mercury retrograde is over, like process those feelings. But that's where we are. We're coming off of this energy, and the tricky thing about the Mercury Cazimi, the conjunction with the Sun, is that on either side of a 1 degree conjunction, it's pretty much agreed that like it's called combust if it's within 8 degrees, and then under the Sun's rays if it was between 8 and 17 degrees. And so Mercury loses visibility unless it's in the center. It's kind of like that, the metaphor for like in the eye of a storm is how this kind of works. There's like a clarity in the center, and then once you get to the sides, it can get a bit blurry. And so we're already kind of in the blurry phase. Once we get on to the other side of this week, we have Venus square Uranus. Bing bong. First off, on Monday, this is pretty volatile. It's also, I find it funny because it's almost like the girls are fighting because Uranus is in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, which is currently retrograde. Venus is in Virgo. Venus isn't happy in Virgo necessarily. It's not unhappy, but it doesn't act as Venusian. It doesn't act as the archetype often acts, which I don't find is a problem, but it can be a difficulty for the native specifically. But it's also ruled by Mercury. And so these two very mercurial energies with Venus and Uranus are coming together. I also find that with the Mercury rulership, as a Virgo rising, Virgo moon, I either gel seamlessly with people with Gemini placements or we're constantly picking knowledge battles together. And so there is this element of like, there is congruence. These planets are under the same rulership. Um, they both have similar goals in the sense of like progressing time and and moving through the cosmos, but they rule very different properties. And so Uranus is about chaos and intervention and doing things differently and creating new things. And Venus is about relationships and values and building. And so you are going to probably come up against your values. You also might come up against them in a surprising way. This also, since we're in the Mercury retrograde, could also be someone surprising showing up in your life for a lesson. They don't always have to be lessons. It's very contingent on your chart and on your past life stuff. But it does feel as though something is going to be coming up that is going to challenge our values, that is going to challenge what we have learned in love. And when I use love, I'm not necessarily just talking about romance. It can be, that's a prominent theme when we talked about Venus, but it can be what we've learned in love, family love, or friendship love. We're going to be coming up against a change or a shift. This also feels like very much a challenge to maybe something that you've learned recently. And so you're like, oh, I've learned this new thing. It's great. And then you're going to have a situation come up that's like, prove it. Prove that you've learned, prove that you've innovated, prove that you have changed when it comes to this. And that often means bringing back an old energy and having an old energy come in to challenge us and to trigger us. So this day could be very triggering. I think it can be helpful in the sense of like knowing how you want to change, how you want to move forward. But because it's a square, there is that tension, there is that kind of push and pull. I also think this is kind of a breakup signature. So if someone's on the verge of breaking up with someone, or in like once again, it doesn't have to be romantic. You can have friendship breakups, you can have splits with family, all of these things. So this can be that. It can also just be the recognition that something is kind of either has to change or die, is what I'm hearing. So change or die is kind of a vibe on Monday. And it also might bring in something fun and unusual, like finding that you're attracted to something different, exploring something when it comes to gender or sexuality, but is going to have a measure of having to overcome a block or a difficulty or a long held belief that maybe you've been working through, but you're being challenged to go the full mile and to stand on your new kind of idea or understanding of something. And that energy is what leads us into the new moon in Cancer on the next day. Now, the new moon in Cancer is just by nature one of the most celebrated moons of the year because it is a new moon, which is all about beginnings and growth. And Cancer is the moon. And so it is a moon moment because the ruler of this sign in Cancer is the moon. And so it's a celebration. And this one's interesting. So it doesn't really aspect anyone. Like I said, we're not having many aspects in Cancer right now. There's a very loose square to Saturn. It's not close enough. I mean, if you're a very Saturnian person, I could see that Saturn square maybe meaning a bit more. There's a little bit of restriction. I think it might, at the most, from my perspective, it can very well be kind of intensifying of this kind of looking back to the past, of this nostalgia that this Mercury retrograde is bringing in, of people kind of craving a simpler time or maybe seeing things with rose colored glasses or wishing they could see things. I don't know that a lot of people are actually seeing things with rose colored glasses, but I think a lot of us are wishing we weren't as smart as we are or as developed. I mean, even me, I think it was 2 weeks ago in therapy, I was like, I'm never going to stop growing and changing because my chart is very stubborn and I just can't not. I've got a ninth house sun. I was like, but it really sucks to continue to grow and change and like lose people and realize that people can't move at the same pace that you can move and can't progress at the speed that you're progressing. And it's not, and to me, it's not a hierarchical thing. I don't think that I'm better than other people. It's my nature to change this much. And some people, it's not their nature. But it's like, it does really, it does really suck to outgrow people and things that you love at a consistent pace. And I find that a lot of people in spirituality do this. And so, especially if you're finding this, there could be this energy of being like, wouldn't it be nice to be naive? Wouldn't it be nice to not care as much? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to find security in the surety of something when nothing is really sure in life? It's just an unfortunate thing that happens when you grow and change energetically. But one of the biggest features and kind of the only feature besides that very loose square with Saturn, which I think is more likely going to take us down memory lane and leave us craving past illusions of stability. I don't know if you can hear that, but funny story for Mercury retrograde. My fridge is currently defrosting completely with all of the things taken out because it's not working. My landlord is convinced it's because I overfilled the freezer, which they possibly, but also the electricity went out a little bit last night, so it might. The current conclusion is that the fan that cools the fridge is frozen, and so fingers crossed it is, because then I can just plug this baby back in, and by the morning I should be able to put all my goodies back. But we shall see. If any of you are curious about the outcome, you can always ask me in the comments. Not that I think most people are going to care. Anyways, happy Mercury retrograde to me. And also, very funny that like frozen water that is stuck, is what is probably causing this. Very on brand. Anyways, my little ADHD ramble is over. We have this Mercury conjunction, and so there is a lot of realization and recognition in this moment. I think there's going to be a lot of aha moments. I also think while it's still it's off by a degree, and so we're starting getting into the combust area where things are less visible. I do think this is going to be an interesting moment where I think some people are going to show their asses. You're going to have some breakthroughs, mostly because people are not as proficient at lying at this time. You also might have some clarity and recognition around family patterns. You might, I can see this going one of two extremes, either completely cutting off a family member or finding some kind of healing with them. Very much depends on where you are in your journey with them. Um, this could also be the case with a romantic partner, but I think my concern is that I know what the rest of the astrology of this year is, and so reconciliation with a partner, especially with a partner or even a friend or a family member where there's been a massive amount of betrayal, the Venus retrograde, the Mars retrograde, to me don't read that this is going to end well. So be cautious around reconciliation. Don't reconcile all the way. You need boundaries. You also need some kind of healing plan. So whether it's couples therapy or family therapy, or being like, hey, I'm letting you back into my life, but I don't fully trust you yet, and so if we're going to maintain this relationship, then I need you to be okay with me being suspicious because you've done the dirty on me before. And if we can do that for now, then I'm okay with reopening this. Um, but it is a moment of rebirth. When it comes to manifesting, it can be tricky during a Mercury retrograde to kind of soak your hopes and dreams. But I think if you are in a very raw place and you're open to the universe kind of taking you, like you're open to, you know, probably same goals, but different journey to getting to those goals, I would say you can manifest on this one. Um, it is the last new moon to manifest before. Is it the last new moon? Yeah, it's the last new moon to manifest before the eclipses. So just know that this is carrying you into the eclipses and will be handled probably in an eclipsy way, especially with the Mercury retrograde. So be open to whatever you manifest. I don't think you're gonna be disappointed, but be open to it having twists and turns, to it kind of shifting and changing over time. And now the shifts and changes are gonna be good. It's just you being okay with that being the trajectory under this moment. Especially if you have any planets within 5 degrees of 21 degrees of Cancer, I would do that. I also note, actually, I'll do this here. PSA, promoting my work, which I always forget to do. There will be a new moon in Cancer video soon. Check that out. There will also be a new moon in Cancer short tarot reading for those who don't want to watch the whole thing, and then a tarot reading within that video. Also, I am promoting a class that I will be hosting on the 9th of August for 5 weeks on psychic connection. It does cost money, but I have it on a sliding scale to make it accessible. So please go check that out over on my IG if you're curious. It's about connecting to psychic gifts, tools for connecting and strengthening psychic gifts, ways to access them, all the good stuff. And it's going to be interactive, and I'm going to be using people's charts to talk about their psychic gifts, and I'm going to be using other tools that I use as a psychic medium. So please join me. I would love to have you. I also think it's going to be a great opportunity to kind of build relationships with other people in the class who are similarly curious as well. Anyways, that is my little message. Also, like and subscribe. That would also be nice. And thank you to everyone who does. It always makes my day. And also pop a comment below if you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, ideas. Just want to share something with me. Anyways, back to this new moon. It is going to kind of overtake this week, but we have some pretty fairly large other things going on as well. The Venus square Uranus is the big one. And we also have, you know, then on Wednesday, oh, and I missed this as well. Cute of me to do that. I really have to go back to my notes. Good thing I caught it though. So, actually, no, that's not it. Oh, I'm getting the whole thing wrong. Never mind. I didn't make a mistake. I'm just having Mercury retrograde brain. Never mind. I was like, there's an opposition in here somewhere. No, there's not. Thank God. I was still back in like Neptune and Pisces, and I was like, Venus is in Virgo. There's an opposition. I forgot it. How could I? No, I'm wrong. Anyways, and the next thing is the sextile. Sorry, guys. Bear with me, and I'm not cutting this because these videos are very raw. I edit my tarot videos, by the way. If you ever want an actually edited video and not me just yammering. Anyways, so we have this big impactful moment. It's really pivotal to the trajectory of this Mercury retrograde, to the shifts. I think you're going to see a lot of stuff change from this point forward because of how involved, like, not only is Mercury retrograde, which it is usually in the sign of the sun, but it's not always smack dab up and against a new moon like this, especially without anything else really in being involved. And so this is a really big turning point. I also think this can be a big turning point. There have been several of these this year. where I think this is a moment where we're going to look back and go, oh, that's when something interesting started, or that's when something longer term began that I wasn't aware of in the moment. But if you kind of weave together the story, this is the inception of something really important. So be thoughtful about the stuff you're manifesting. Um, I also, whenever in doubt when manifesting, just manifest how you'd like to feel at the end of it. Now, I do encourage getting bolder and manifesting more specific stuff, just being okay with like maybe getting something even better, or things happening in a slightly different way. Because I'm not a direct manifester, or I haven't yet attained that. I do have a lot of stuff in my chart that gets in the way. We're working through it, and that's something that you can learn about in my class. Um, maybe I am a salesman, but if you're not sure about what to manifest, manifest your feelings. Manifest feeling joy, manifest feeling successful, manifest ease using I have, I am, it has already happened, those types of phrases rather than will, because we live on multiple timelines. So on in some space and time, the reality that you desire already exists. And so I want you to remember this, especially as we go into our next aspect, which is on Wednesday. We basically have stuff going on almost every day this week. Uranus sextile Neptune. Now, sextiles are nice. They're a bit more fun. They're a bit more playful. Now, when we're looking at the great outer planets, we do have to keep in mind that this has been a long time coming. These two have been an orb for a minute, and they will continue to be an orb for like the next year and a half. Uranus might move a little quicker, might be a year, but we'll get into 2027 and they will still be within a couple of degrees of each other, because they will both retrograde, and Uranus doesn't go past, I think, 6 degrees, maybe five. It's 5 degrees because it's on my midheaven. 5 degrees and we'll come back, and Neptune does the same thing. So know that this is a much longer and broader story, and the impact on the day may or may not be strong depending on where this falls in your chart, because you have been experiencing this for several weeks now. Whenever Uranus went into Gemini, which I don't know, I'm blanking. I think it was the end of May. Uranus went into Gemini for the final time. That's when this started. So this is a shift and a change. It's also a transformation around spirituality and the belief of spirituality. It's an innovation around your spirituality. Neptune covers a lot of topics, but when it comes to specifically kind of how I talk about stuff in the work that I do, this is about re-understanding the psychic space, re-understanding stuff. It's kind of I mean, the class that I'm teaching is actually because probably this aspect is very much involved, but it's about reimagining it and having radical perspectives and not being kind of trapped in stuff. Now, the downside of Neptune and Aries is that Neptune is very wet and it's down a very dry place, and so we get things get obscured, and the energy doesn't feel the same. But the bright side about Neptune and Aries is it is quicker, it moves faster, and so this can be a very rapid growth when it comes to your spirituality. I would suggest, especially if you do spiritual work, go back and look and see what was happening around the end of May, or if I got that aspect wrong, not aspect but transit wrong, whenever it went into Gemini. I'm also recording this very late, so my brain is sludge. Anyways, Uranus sextile Neptune, the impact here, it is about the transformation of the unseen and the spiritual world. I also could see, not like Pluto, but also we'll talk about that because Pluto also goes into its trine with Uranus here too. But I do think this week we're going to be getting some clarity around something. Uranus and Neptune having their exaction, it's very much like, oh, I didn't really know that was a thing. I could very easily see, because Uranus is very much like modern medicine and modern science. And I think modern astrology, my personal opinion is ancient astrology is ruled by Saturn, modern astrology is associated with Uranus, and they both they cross. But with this, I could see a lot of forward movement when it comes to scientific discoveries and exploration. Also, unfortunately, with Uranus sextile Neptune, especially if you live in the US, where our kind of rules and regulations have been blown out of the water by Orange Man and then Salute Guy, who then ditched us with his little doge, and now we don't have a functioning system to protect us. But a lot of progression and surprises when it comes to how unprotected we are from environmental things, big time. There are several outbreaks going on that are not under control in the US that are causing distress. I don't think they've caused death yet, but it's one of them is a really aggressive virus that causes like months of the most extreme bowel, well, I'll just say it, running diarrhea that you've ever seen. And that feels very Uranus, Neptune, and Aries, unfortunately. And so I think we're going to see more stuff like this of like, oh, the system's not working or this is broken. Not necessarily because Neptune has broken things, but just like, oh, we didn't see that before. And now we're seeing it. And now it's obvious. And so just a lot of revelations around that. I also could see people getting diagnoses around this time when it comes to your body. A lot when it comes to inflammation is going to be coming forward. We might even see some breakthroughs when it comes to MCAS or Ehlers-Danlos or any of those autoimmune disorders that deal with inflammation in the body. Could be one. I have those, by the way. I have multitudes within me, chronic illnesses. So yeah, this is a week of stuff coming to the surface. I think it can be equally joyful and exciting, and also crazy and distressing. You know, Neptune, Uranus, and even all of the planets, they don't really have good and bad. They are neutral, but they can be levels of like excitement and happiness, and upset and anger. I also think with Uranus sextile Neptune, we will hear more stuff about how we don't have water, and we might even hear about how some people are trying to find a way to get us more water, and then some not nice things might happen to them. And you're like, Abigail, do you wear a tinfoil hat? I'm like, well, in the past 5 years, a lot of the things that I thought were tinfoil hat turned out to be true. So sometimes yes. But then we go into Friday with Uranus trine Pluto, and this is shocking, surprising news. This is unexpected news, and not necessarily news, but like secrets revealed, which are so unexpected that they will make it to the news. It's also, unfortunately, it can also seem like an overwhelming amount of victories on the part of Empire. Um, it's basically the system trying to outplay people wanting to break it down. And so I can see now with Uranus involved, Uranus is about change and innovation. And so I could also see this being progress in certain court cases. I could see this being um, a law kind of coming forward that's like, oh, we can actually use this to counterbalance that. We might actually see some people embodying the archetype of Uranus and coming forward and pushing back against the power that be. Also, we will see Pluto people, which are people who initiate endings coming in and ending and destroying things. And while we may not enjoy them as much and they may genuinely be villains, they still hold a role in this whole cosmic thing. And so, end of the week is pretty bombastic. And this also, Uranus trine Pluto can also be medical issues and um, kind of more like with the Uranus sextile, it can be like discoveries. Uranus trine Pluto can be swift bad news. Not necessarily as unexpected as you would think, because Pluto, it's kind of like, oh, that would make sense. But unexpected is in like, well, that wasn't planned, if that makes any sense. So a lot of bombastic energy. This is what we get when we get the outer planets really rolling up their sleeves. Also check where these are. The Uranus Pluto trine is 4 degrees of Gemini, 4 degrees of Aquarius. Uranus sextile Neptune, you know where Uranus is, Neptune is in Aries at 4 degrees. You know, and don't forget that Uranus was at the beginning of this week with Venus, so putting in the heavy work. And so there's this element of surprise and change and shift. And I think with Uranus trine Pluto, we also might see a resurgence of like rich billionaires being like, we've come up with an incredible idea to disenfranchise people and make more money for ourselves. We're going to see more of that. Now, we could also see resistance groups coming up. We could also see people pulling collective power. That's also a surprise that can happen. But with the way our media works across the world, a lot of times the billionaires get the most visibility, unless they bury it. And then on Sunday, so keep that in mind, we'll wrap that up. But then on Sunday, we have Mars sextile Saturn. And I honestly am kind of down for it. You know, Mars is in Gemini, Saturn is in Aries. Is this a bit of an aggressive aspect? Yes, but there is a support here. We're going to be able to get some shit done, even with the Mercury retrograde. Even with all of this, we will get a few things done, which will be very nice. It's also about determination, but determination in a Gemini sense. So Gemini doesn't necessarily push with a steady hand, but Gemini looks for problem solving in different areas for the same problem. And so finding a way to work through our blocks and limitations, also finding a way to leverage the systems in order to get the stuff that we want done. So it's kind of like voting in the US. Is voting technically not always effective because of gerrymandering and the electoral college and stuff? Yes, but it is still a tool that we can leverage to get stuff done, to then weigh things to our side down the road, which I think is a place where a lot of liberals and leftists kind of, they don't think far enough ahead. Meanwhile, the Republicans are like 50 years, 100 years out in their planning. And so I think we could learn that this week with that sextile to Saturn, of like, you have to come up with ideas for longer term plans, and those ideas can be smaller, shorter term things, but they can have a long term effect. And Saturn in Aries likes that, because Saturn in Aries wants to get things moving. And neither Mars in Gemini and Mars and Saturn in Aries enjoy the Mercury retrograde energy. Not that they necessarily have opinions, but like both of them, Saturn in Aries is an exception, that it likes to move fast when Saturn doesn't normally like to move fast. That's why it's in fall. And then Mars in Gemini likes to be all over the place and likes to think quickly. And then, as I've mentioned several times, Mercury in Cancer is not fast moving, especially retrograde. And so there is this element of actually feeling a bit productive on this day, actually getting some stuff done. Now, will the Mercury retrograde probably mess with it a little bit? Wee. But this is kind of a nice little burst of energy as we leave this week after all of these big events. It'll also be a moment where we will feel a bit more in control, especially if we take creative action in the moment. It doesn't have to be a long term thing, but like one short term thing, or maybe 5 short term things, because it's in Gemini. Things that we can do that feel progressive in the moment and will be progressive down the road and have kind of a longer lasting effect, but kind of a smaller footprint as you move forward. And so being creative, being curious, it is the two malefics getting together, so we can see some aggressive behavior coming in, but I do see sextiles as more communal, more problem solving than violent. I mean, it could also be people scheming who you're not a fan of, because astrology doesn't discriminate when it comes to who uses that energy. But if you want to use it to problem solve, use it to create, write down your thoughts on this day. I think something down the road, like if you don't find something in it now, you'll find something in it later. But I do like that we end this week with a bit of creativity. I do want to peek into next week to see if there's anything. Um, yeah, we've got Leo's. Yeah, so next week, that's up. Next week is a red letter week, just so you know, just a little peek into the future. Leo season, there's a lot of other stuff actually happening. There's many notes on this page. And I don't write down descriptions, I just write down the aspects. So it might not look like much, but it is. Leo season, Mercury stationing direct, Saturn retrograde, and the lunar nodes moving into Aquarius and Leo, all happening next week. So this week is going to feel big, but next week going to feel bigger. It's the energy coming down the line, especially with Jupiter oppose Pluto. It's gonna be something, and that hits Monday. So I like to give you a bit of a heads up, because I like a bit of a heads up to be prepared. Anyways, my loves, I love you so much. I've already given you all the plugs for all of my stuff, but keep that in mind. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I love you all. I wish you a blessed and creative week. Still take it easy. We're in the Mercury retrograde, but some interesting stuff's going to come to you, just not in the way you expect. All right. Many blessings.